If you've watched my recent videos, you might know that music games have kind of taken over my life. The ransom note is in the mail and I'm stuck in Japanese techno hell until my fingers give out. Music games have that effect. Groove Coaster, Rock Band, Tunithm, all games about mastering that most basic human impulse of hitting things in time with a beat until happy chemicals flood your brain and make you forget what time it is. But if there's one thing that most music games have in common, it's that they're all about rhythm. Which is funny because you know as well as I do that music is about so much more than just timing. Real music, like the stuff you sometimes see on Spotify in between adverts for Joe Rogan, is layered with all kinds of variations in texture, synthesizers and amplifiers, and people blowing raspberries into metal tubes to achieve all different kinds of sounds. You might even be hard-pressed to find a rhythm in some songs. Music games are rigid in certain respects, often compressing the entire audio spectrum into 4 to 8 coloured buttons and presenting it in clearly defined intervals of time. Honestly, this, right here, is such a common format that music games is kind of an archaic term. You probably know these as rhythm games. And rhythm games aren't about sound, they're about, well, rhythm. When it comes to how you produce sounds, you might occasionally get to whittle a whammy bar or fire off an air horn or two, but under these constraints, playing something that sounds like this is the same as playing this. The music game genre is dominated by rhythm games, and that isn't a bad thing. I love rhythm games more than I love some family members. But it seems to me like there's a lot of space out there for music games that aren't just about timing, but about texture too. I'm thinking about games like Proteus, where your interactions with a tropical island creates weirdo soundscapes. Or even Fracked OSC, which goes so far as to simulate different synthesizers and plugins, asking you to twiddle knobs to alter waveforms and solve abstract puzzles. But in this video, I'm going to focus on a seemingly forgotten music game that's a bit more recent. In 2020, Harmonix, the creators of Rock Band and Dance Central, released Fusa. And Fusa is a music game that combines the best parts of FL Studio and YouTube Poop into an experience that's all about texture. In Fusa, you're given access to a wide library of chart singles, all of which have been split into 4 instruments. So usually guitar, drums, synth, and vocals. You're tasked with piecing these different parts together and fiddling with their parameters, drag and drop style, to come up with the next club banger. Want to know what Basement Jaxx would sound like with Carly Rae Jepsen on vocals? What if you added some deep-fried country guitar into the mix? And hell, how about we transpose the whole thing into, let's say, G minor? With Fusa, experimenting with sound like this is surprisingly easy. I'll be honest, it's hard to make a video about a game like Fusa for YouTube. With the music industry ready to fire the copyright cannons at so much as a snippet of unlicensed Rick Astley, how do you make a video about a game that's all about rearranging Rick Astley vocal samples? Well, I thought about it for a bit, and hopefully the solution sounds something like this. As you can hear, Fusa is capable of creating monsters. The kind of monsters that not even EMI's most sophisticated copyright detection drones could stop. But these monsters all adhere to a core set of rules that make Fusa kind of a technical marvel. For as avant-garde as your creations in Fusa get, they're always beat, pitch, and key matched automatically in real time. So no matter what samples you stitch together, it never sounds entirely wrong. The underlying technology in Fusa is remarkable. allowing you to combine songs that have no business being in the same room together and coming out with something completely musically competent, if not entirely listenable.
Sexy as hell, I said, ooh, I like your size. She said my chords broke down and just sing real nice with your lips.
Fuser has a lot of options for experimenting with texture, from funky effects interfaces to automated risers and mixers, and it all just works. You can snapshot mixes and insert them piecemeal into other mixes. You can queue and drop multiple discs at once.
Get your game on, go play.
And with the ability to lay down your own donkey instrumental tracks, it's never been easier to pay your respects to the man in the ice cream van. Harmonix have spent decades looking at audio files up close, and Fuser kind of feels like a culmination of their expertise. A controlled sandbox in which you can break songs apart and put them back together again. Realistically, I could imagine Fuser being the beginning of someone's obsession with audio, especially in the hands of someone younger. Don't get me wrong, if you want to get deep into the weeds, you'll still have to noodle around with physical hardware or pirate an audio workstation like everyone else. This isn't a replacement for music making software, it's still a game. But there is an immediacy to Fuser's mechanics that allows you to rapidly iterate through different sounds and play with effects in real time. If you want a demonstration of the qualities of, say, a flanger or a low-pass filter, I can't think of a better medium than here, in real time, over a pitched-down techno remix of Dolly Parton's Jolene.
Jolene, 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 I'm begging of you, please don't take my name.
As a toolset, Fuser is amazing, and that's why it's such a shame that it seems to have been forgotten about. But there might be a reason for that, because as a game, it is also kind of a mess. When you look closely at Fuser's gameplay, the elegance of Rock Band, where a highway drops sharply defined notes into your hands, is nowhere to be seen. The visual language is splashy and goopy, all bright colours sloshing through holes like a flood at a Play-Doh factory, and it's got the structure to match. I think an inherent problem with focusing on texture over rhythm is that a lot of texture is subjective. Who's to say if this or this sounds better? Rhythm can be a lot more objective, especially if you're just trying to recreate an established song as written. You're either on time or you're not. But how do you score someone on something as experimental as texture? Well, Fuser is split into two core modes. Freestyle, which functions like a sandbox for experimenting with the game's tools, and then a scored campaign mode, and this is where things really fall apart. Sidestepping any issues around subjectivity, Harmonix based scoring solely on how quickly you can make edits to your mixes. You are required to stay on the beat, but beyond that, the vast majority of the game's scoring requirements revolve around meeting audience requests as quickly as possible. So you're dropped onto a stage with a crate of old one-hit wonders and bombarded with text requests from know-it-all audience members, and you're scored on your ability to keep up with all of these requests, no matter how absurd they might be. In practice, all this means is that you'll get nose deep into a remix of Benny Benassi's Satisfaction, only for someone at the back of the crowd to request Never Gonna Give You Up like a drunk yelling for Freebird in a pub. And if you want to score well and progress in the game, you have to listen to them. The crowds in Fuser are unruly. They'll ask for clubland bangers in the middle of your ambient soundscapes and for country western classics in the middle of your clubland bangers. They wouldn't know good music if it slapped them in the face, and based on their positive response to my mashup of Jolene and All Star, they don't know bad music either. They're unstoppable dancing automatons. All they seem to care about is that ill-fitting musical clips are delivered to them on every downbeat. It's stressful, it's hellish, and it really doesn't work. Fuser's career mode only really tests your ability to navigate the game's basic tools, which is a shame because there are objective terms you can use when describing sound and texture, and I think it would have been more interesting if the audience requests focused in on that stuff. For example, if instead of just requesting Ace of Base like a kid at a school disco circa 1992, they instead asked you to put a donk on it.
Put a donk on it!
To make it sound muffled or muddy. The kind of vocabulary that would lean into the game's strengths as a game about texture rather than rhythm. Plus, as an added bonus, it wouldn't torpedo your trance masterpieces with Shania Twain samples. Then again, would that have made it more enjoyable than a traditional rhythm game like DJ Hero, where you push light-up buttons and spin clacky turntables in time with the Chemical Brothers? Probably not, and I think it's here in Fusa's cracks where we can see why most games focus on the immediacy of rhythm rather than the goopy, nebulous realm of texture and sound. Experiments in texture don't really lend themselves to the traditional scoring structure. So, if it wasn't already apparent, Fusa's scoring system, and the campaign treading all over it like a drunk clown on stilts, aren't really its main appeal. Fusa's campaign functions more like a overly long, deeply cringy tutorial.
You're here! Come on!
Designed to teach you the game's mechanics and then push you back into the freestyle mode. Fusa's best moments are here, when you're really getting weird with it, finding the right combination of filters and discs to create something that sounds new and interesting, and letting the game do all of the heavy lifting to actually tie it together and make it work. Because Fusa has so many options to explore, I think it really excelled in its online mode, which allowed you to collaborate with others on mixes in real time, or to upload and view other people's mixes, on those dark nights of the soul where you felt like listening to 14-year-olds butcher club classics. Fusa's online components were essentially an international show and tell, where people would inflict their most heinous creations on the community at large. I had a lot of fun with Fusa's online mode, and it was made even better by the Diamond stage, where you could spend in-game currency to bid for slots performing in front of the entire player base. The Diamond stage was broadcast live on Twitch, and so with enough currency stored up, you could force your jazz fusion remixes of Ava Max onto the unsuspecting masses. Sharing all of these future sounds like Marvin Berry and Back to the Future was just fun. Unfortunately, not many people played Fusa. Something I forgot to mention about the Diamond stage is that it was a late addition to the game and would struggle to pull in more than 10 people at a time. Being into Fusa was kind of like being part of a special club, where you all assembled on your couches like the laziest Avengers to vote on C-tier SoundCloud remixes. I can only imagine that the 5 people who bought into Dropmix, Fusa's older, uglier sister, felt even more special. I wouldn't be surprised if they could recognize each other on the street. Ultimately, Fusa was a failure. A big failure. The kind of failure that unwashed, bearded men get mad about on YouTube. Grammar nerds in my audience might have realized that I switched to the past tense a little while ago, and that's because the game was removed from sale in 2022, just 2 years after its release, and the online servers were shut down with it. When you think about it, maybe 2020 wasn't the best year to release a game targeted at the house party demographic. For a brief time though, Fusa was a flawed proof of concept. A game about texture rather than rhythm, where knowing how to find, duplicate and distort the bassline for Billie Eilish's Bad Guy was just as, if not more valuable than feeling out a dotted quarter note. Fusa isn't entirely dead. In 2021, Epic Games, the self-appointed Dark Lords of PC gaming, swooped in with an acquisition offer and tried to incorporate Harmonix's technology into their own games. After taking a few glances at Roblox's homework, Epic decided to turn their own game, Fortnite, into a platform for smaller games and experiences. And this is where Harmonix now lives. Like a laser-guided missile aimed at your nephew's pocket money, Fortnite now has purchasable jam tracks that kind of function like Fusa discs. Kind of. I'll be honest, I'm not really a Fortnite guy, but from what I understand, Fortnite Jam doesn't entirely scratch the same itch as Fuser. It's more of a half-hearted salvaging of Fuser's core technology that's been used to create, essentially, elaborate audio emotes you can use in between hitting the griddy in your RP sessions. So ultimately, if you are interested in Fuser, you're probably better off avoiding Fortnite and trying to get your hands on the original. And knowing the internet, I'm sure that isn't too hard. Actually, more than that, I wouldn't be surprised if people were still out there adding their own music and stems to the game. Again, the underlying tech is super impressive, and the ways in which it can stitch together implausible combinations of songs is a small marvel, and really shines after a few drinks with friends. Ultimately, I don't think the world was ready for Fuser. Music games are so bogged down in ideas of rhythm that they don't have a lot of room for experiments in sound. They're all time in and no texture, and I think that really hurt Fuser's chances in the long run. But if you're interested in seeing what a music game about texture does look like, Fuser is definitely worth looking into, even if just to confirm that maybe there is a reason we focused in on rhythm in the first place.